What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Well, as you can see, all the parts have finally arrived. So now it's time to begin the latest project on the channel. It's going to be the Killer Instinct 2 Deluxe cabinet. All right, let's take a closer look at all these parts. This is the stuff that's going to make this project happen. And we're going to start with the Mortal Kombat 2 Deluxe cabinet from Arcade1up. Pick this up at Best Buy. A complete graphics kit from Repro Arcade. This is something you can go on the website and buy right now. A set of buttons from DIY Retro Arcade, basically just a bunch of blue and white buttons. A PCB that I bought off eBay for an original Killer Instinct cabinet. And of course, Mortal Kombat has a little bit of a different button layout, so we're going to steal the control panel that I had on my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet. We're going to reuse it for this project. Is it all going to be plug and play? Well, not exactly. Let me show you what I'm talking about. First, let's go ahead and start with the PCB swap itself. This is Killer Instinct. You can tell by the hastily written KI with the Sharpie on the back cover. It's, for the most part, strictly plug and play, right? There was something I noticed, though. Now, as we all know, if you've done any modding before, if you've ever replaced a PCB, you understand that it is very important that the red wires go on the proper side of whatever board you're hooking up. Now, usually you're going to disconnect this from a board, and then when you reconnect it, you've taken note of where that position was. That's not the case with this. When you're doing a PCB swap, you technically haven't removed this PCB out of its original game. So you're not exactly sure how it's supposed to be hooked up. The reason I point this out is because when I looked at my original Mortal Kombat Deluxe PCB and removed it, the cable was in the other direction. And based on the location of the other sockets, I thought that the red wire was supposed to be over here. And the cable was sort of kinked in that way. So I thought, yeah, okay, it makes perfect sense. Well, that's not the case. I actually plugged this in that way. After I got everything else figured out that I'm going to show you in just a second, I powered it up and it did not. Now, the backlight illuminated, but there was no video. I did have audio. So I was really scared. I thought I'd messed up this board. Actually, I thought I messed up the monitor, not the board. So I reconnected in this orientation and it worked fine. So it's not necessarily the end of the world if you get this wrong, but you don't want to make the same mistake that I made. You don't even want to take the chance. So just make sure that the red wire is going to be on the side of the power for the backlight of your monitor. And when it comes to power, the power switch is actually not something that's cut and dry. On some of these control panels, you have a momentary switch, and then you have a solid switch that will stay in a position. So usually it's denoted by two wires. You have on and off, right? On and off. The switch will stay in that position. But on some of the other games, like Killer Instinct, you're going to have a momentary switch, which will just return to the center position. And that's going to be a 3-wire hookup. The reason I say this is because you're going to have a 6-button layout if you want to make this work. And if you're going to use this control panel that I'm using right here on a Mortal Kombat cabinet, you're going to have an issue when you plug in your KI ribbon cable to this PCB or this encoder, because this encoder is not going to have the correct power switch. It's going to be wired for the 2-wire or the locked position, right? So what that means is that you're going to have a completely different socket you're going to plug into on the encoder. You need to be plugging in over here to the momentary switch. So what you're going to have to do, if you do not have the encoder with your PCB, now I bought mine on eBay, it did include the encoder. If you don't have that option, you're going to have to change over the encoder from your Mortal Kombat Deluxe cabinet. Take this encoder, because it does have the correct momentary switch, and you're going to have to bring that over to this control panel, just so you can make this work. Because if not, when you plug everything up, it's not going to do anything, because it's actually, you have wires plugged into a socket that's not going anywhere. So just make sure, take the time, and get the right switch, and you'll be good to go. So with all that sorted out, now it's time to strip this control panel down to the bare bones. And remember, at some point, we're going to have to put this thing back together. So do yourself a favor, take the time to grab a piece of notebook paper and write down what wire goes to what button. The last thing you want to do is put it all back together and find out that fierce punch is actually weak kick. It's just a pain. So avoid that, take some notes. Trust me, you'll thank me when it's all back together. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and strip the whole control panel, except for the joysticks. I don't really mind these. I might change them in the future, and they're kind of a pain to take off and put back on because of the glue and everything that they have to attach them to the wooden control panel itself. So in a little bit of preparation, I'm going to go ahead and take the overlay and trace out where those joysticks are going to go. just cut out those little holes, and then we're going to use that to align this piece to the control panel. I just got a couple little cuts, slide this in place. Once I'm happy with the fitment, you can kind of feel the buttons through the actual material itself. Go ahead and cut a little bit of the backing off, and then once again line it up, anchor that left-hand corner, and then apply the entire graphic. And while the stock joysticks are staying, those stock buttons are not. So we're going to go ahead and swap in a set of blued 28mm concave replacements from DIY Retro Arcade. And while you're at the website, go ahead and pick up this wrench. It makes the installation process a lot easier. Installing the side art is pretty much standard. It's universal. You just want to line this up and get it centered as best you can. I like to go ahead and get it in place and then feel the corners to make sure I have roughly the same amount of overlap in all the key places. Now, the screw hole covers that come with your Mortal Kombat cabinet are all black, and that's really not going to work for this cabinet. So I dug into my spare parts bin, and luckily I have an assortment of yellow and red and green covers that are going to work out great for this side art. You can see the yellow is going to fit perfectly there. Let's go ahead and put a red one up top, and yeah, this is going to look great. And of course, no Arcade1up project is complete without a lit coin door kit from Retro 530. It's the best bang for the buck. It's the best use of your money, and this project is not going to go without one. Now, Killer Instinct 2 absolutely has to have a rockin' sound system, and to pull that off, I'm going to bring back one of my favorite mods of all time. We're going to install a Logitech Z313 subwoofer kit in this cabinet. It absolutely has to have it, and now it's time to begin to put it all together, and you can really see this is absolutely turning out great, in my personal opinion, but I guess I am a little bit biased. The subwoofer controller is going to be located on the top of the cabinet just to the left, and you can see it's going to be worth it to take your time and get the wiring right. Cable management is an absolute must if you want your project to, not only look good, but be easy to troubleshoot in the future. Now, to keep this thing looking as stock as possible, we're going to modify each back panel, starting with the bottom, little notch on the bottom for that cord, and then a little notch on the top for the volume controller. Okay, so the last part of this Killer Instinct 2 puzzle is going to be the monitor bezel. Mortal Kombat 2 just doesn't quite fit the theme, so we got a couple different options here. The side art kit that I ordered does come with just black bezel that you could just cut out and put on, and you're fine, but that does take a little bit of effort to measure and get everything right. And just to have a black bezel, I really didn't think that was going to be worth it, so I decided to go with something a little bit different. Now, at first I thought, let's do the Joe Sabo overlay. It's acrylic, and you just take out these two screws, you lay it in there, and you're done. Problem with that, though, is there's a big difference between the Killer Instinct cabinet and this cabinet as far as this space, this gap between the control panel and the bottom of the monitor. Remember, on that Killer Instinct cabinet, this was pretty much just flat. One of my criticisms about that cabinet. So the gap would have been, it just wouldn't have been enough to showcase all the moves on the bottom of that particular acrylic bezel. So I thought I'd just decide to go something just super plain, super simple. I don't mind the Arcade1up logo. This is an Arcade1up. I'm not trying to hide that fact. So having the logo there is fine. So I thought I would just go ahead and go with a simple banner up top and just put that over the Mortal Kombat and be good to go. Now, I did go to Game On Graphics, designed this myself, and I just ordered it in the generic like 2-inch by I think 18-inch size, and then just cut it to fit in there perfectly. The great thing about this is I don't have to disassemble the cabinet at all. I got the monitor on, just want to line that up and make sure that it is level, and then just stick it on, and then we'll be done. And speaking of done, yeah, I'm finally done. I think this thing turned out really well, using a bunch of different components, obviously different vendors helping out with different kits. Keeping some of my spare parts to cover all those screw holes with the appropriate covers was like a big win. To have a bunch of black dots just really wouldn't have looked good. This thing is absolutely the cabinet that Arcade1up should make if they ever revisit Killer Instinct and decide to go with the Deluxe. And just like my other custom Deluxe builds, I like going with these speaker grills that have these different color rings. And of course, this one is no exception. I found a sweet set of metallic red that really goes great with that T-molding. And of course, the link for that will be in the description. And as we take one last look at this cabinet in the black light glow of the arcade, I gotta say, I am incredibly happy with the way this turned out. It's absolutely the way that Arcade1up should go. I want to say a big shout out, a big thanks to Sean with ReproArcade.co. Definitely want to check out their website for this exact kit, and let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. Y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see all of you next time.